Apple, Google, Samsung, and Xiaomi are one of the most well-known smartphone brands in the world. And each of these companies have smartphones that must showcase the best each company has to offer. The iPhone, Pixel, Galaxy S, and Xiaomi Ultra series are all given the term flagship. But what does that actually mean? What hardware, features, or characteristics fit the flagship label? To understand this a bit better, I went back to where the term flagship originally came from. All right, let's jump in. Now, if you understand anything about the age of sailing ships or you just watch a whole lot of One Piece, you will have a better idea of what the term flagship actually means. I had to do a quick Wikipedia search just to confirm my thoughts, and the description that I found was pretty interesting. So, a flagship is a vessel used by a commanding officer of a group of naval ships, characteristically a flag officer entitled by custom to fly a distinguishing flag. Used more loosely, it is the lead ship in a fleet of vessels, typically the first, largest, fastest, most heavily armed, or best known. So each smartphone company has its own flagship: Samsung, Apple, Google, and Xiaomi. So when you think about Samsung, the fastest, largest, and most heavily armed would be the S25 series. It has the best processor the smartphone lineup has ever used. It has a phone with a 6.9-inch screen that is packed with a wide variety of features that makes it the most equipped for a wide variety of situations. That is true for Samsung. That is the best that they have to offer. Same goes for Xiaomi and iPhones. But what about Google? Okay, full disclosure, I have never used a Google Pixel phone, so everything I'm going to say is based off articles I've read or somebody else physically testing it based off like the reviews that I've seen and things like that. Okay, Google Pixel phones do not have the best processor on the market. In fact, if you had to compare it with other smartphone processors, it comes in last because it is the weakest processor out of all of the flagship processors that are available. So from Snapdragon, the Apple A chips, and the MediaTek Dimensity chips, those perform way better than the Tensor G5, for example. How is it still considered a flagship? It doesn't have flagship level performance processors that are built into the phone. So why is a Google Pixel phone considered a flagship still? I mean, by definition, it is a flagship because if you look at the description, remember the description, it is the lead ship in a fleet of vessels, typically the first, largest, fastest, and most heavily armed or best known. So for Google phones, that's what the Pixel series is. If you compare it to like comparing it to other smartphone brands in terms of like the processor chip, it Google is Google, it stands on its own. And you know, Samsung is Samsung. They don't necessarily, maybe you could say that Samsung's flagship is way better than Google's flagship in terms of processing speed, but that's as far as it goes. But it doesn't necessarily take away from the fact that Google Pixel phones are still flagships. So they are both flagships that are built for different objectives. Just because they don't match in terms of the internal hardware doesn't necessarily mean that one is less flagship than the other. One flagship is focused on delivering a specific objective, and the other one is focused on delivering another objective that is not the same as the first one. So Google Pixel phones are considered flagship because they have a great build, they have amazing cameras, and they have impeccable optimization regarding the software that a beefy processor is inconsequential. Generally, I think to see the value of a product, you have to look at it in isolation. But when it comes to smartphones, that is never going to happen because when people actually want to buy a new smartphone, you want to get the most out of the budget that you have. So you're going to look around and compare one product to another. The confusion, however, does make sense because I would think that if you want to release the best phone, like you would equip it with the best processor that is available. And Google just doesn't do that because they optimize for the one that they have, which is the Tensor series. So in terms of the hardware that we actually consider to be flagship in terms of processor specifically, we look at the Snapdragon 8 Elite. Right now there's the 8 Elite Gen 5 and the Apple A19. and the MediaTek Dimensity 9500 chips. All of these smartphone chips have flagship level performance. Like the benchmark scores are so high that compared to the Google Tensor chips, it's a huge gap. It's night and day. These smartphone chips offer the peak performance that a smartphone can reach. So if a phone does not have one of these chips, it is natural to assume that it is not a flagship. But the term flagship doesn't only encompass processing speed. You have to consider camera hardware, build quality, system software. All of these things make up a flagship. And that is literally the difference between a budget phone and a flagship phone. Take the Samsung A16, for example. It doesn't have any of these. It just gives you the essentials and that's it. Budget phones and flagship phones aren't graded on the same scale because they're not playing the same game. They're like a boat built for fishing instead of a massive seafaring vessel. I hope that makes sense. Thank you for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe, smash the like button, and comment if you have a comment, and I'll catch you in the next one.